2 of our art lesson. So the first part we worked on getting our still life objects sketched out onto our paper, and now we are going to work on the painting part. So we have all drawn a second picture just to get started with a different one since we painted the other ones, and now we're doing another one. So I decided with my second picture that I wanted it to be in a bowl. So notice that I made that line of the front of my bowl go underneath my items, and then I went back and erased that. I'm going to paint over that, so it doesn't matter if that line is there. I've also added some backdrop stuff, stuff in the background. If you want to add background, then you can. If you do not want to add background, you can just paint what you've got. So today we're going to practice those tonal variations. So that's going to be that blending of colors. When we were at school, we did just our apples, and so we worked with one color and working on adding white. What is it when we add white, Lily?
Tint.
And then we worked on adding black, and what is it called when we add black?
Shade.
It's tint and shade is when you add white and black to your colors in order to create tonal changes. So we are going to work on that today, but we're also going to work on blending some colors, so not necessarily just red like we did in school. So if you remember from part 1, we had an onion, an avocado, and a hand sanitizer. So we are going to start with our onion today, and our onion is kind of a orangish color. So the two colors we use to mix to make orange are what, Lily?
Yellow and red.
Yellow and red. And we're going to notice you're going to probably need a little bit more yellow and a little bit less red. It doesn't need to be even amounts, but you mix it to whatever color that you want it to be. And again, your still life items might be different than ours. So we're going to start...
We forgot paint shirts.
Oh, we did forget paint shirts. Lily has one on. Emmy does not. Emmy's going to change real fast. So we are going to blend a color, and we're going to do the main body of our onion to get started. So what do we do with...
Is this an apron?
No, Emma, please just put a shirt on. Lily, what do we do with our brush strokes in order to make our onion look round?
Oh, there is a came round brush strokes.
We use round brush strokes. So you're going to use the direction of your brush in order to create the illusion of the onion being round. So you're going to kind of swoosh around like this. It's a very official term, swooshing. And we are going to get that all blended.
Put this on.
So,
Where is this?
So you're going to leave the space where your highlight is open a little bit, because we're going to come back with a lighter color in that space. And then keep in mind that I want you to have your still life items in front of you, because that way you can examine where the highlight and the shadow is coming from your light source. So remember, we have our window to our left, your right, and we can see a very specific hot spot, which is going to be that highlight that the window light is creating onto our objects. And so we have created round brush strokes on our onion. You can see Lily's right there too. And we are going to come back and we're going to add a little bit of tint to our peachy color in order to make that highlight. So we want it to be pretty light because it's a pretty obvious hot spot. And you're just going to add that light color. And I'm noticing mine isn't light enough. And so I'm going to add a little bit more white. And the big thing with the hot spot is you'll notice right now I have very obvious lines. I want to blend it a little bit. And the easiest way to blend it is to get a little bit of water on your paintbrush, not a ton, but enough where you can blend the colors together so there isn't a super obvious line where the highlight and the main color begin. So you might want to add a little bit more white to yours, Lily. So there we go. There's our hot spot right there. Emmy, do you need help getting your shirt on, sweetheart? Can you put your arm up?
There.
Okay, we got paint shirts on now. There you go. So remember, we want round brush strokes. Yeah, there, perfect. Okay, so our next step is we need to add shade to the back side of our onion. So again, we're going to take that teeny tiny amount of black, because what is black, Lily?
Black is bossy.
Black is bossy. So we don't need very much in order for it to create a shade. So we're going to add a teeny tiny amount to that peach. Again, you don't want it to just be black. You want to add it to the color of the body of your onion so that it's kind of a peachy.
Just like this?
Yeah, like that. Leave it right there for a second, honey. You want to add a little, use your paper towel. So remember, that back side of our onion is where that shadow is.
Always get it so watery.
You need to maybe dry your brush a little bit. So if we're looking at our still life objects in front of us, we can see where that shadow is. Okay, so you need to maybe blend it a little bit more. So remember, what do we do in order to blend it a little bit?
Put a little bit of water on your paintbrush.
A little bit of water on your paintbrush.
Just do this. Blend.
Just a little bit.
There. I'm good at blending.
There you go. Okay, so I have added that little bit of peachy gray, the tiny amount of black. I have a pretty obvious line on mine, so I'm going to come back and take that peach color that I made with that red and that orange, or sorry, that red and that yellow from my body of my onion. And I'm going to come back and just do a little bit on top in order to blend it a little bit more. And it's going to be the same thing no matter what material you're using. If you have acrylic paints and you're able to paint with me right now, that is wonderful. If you're using crayons or colored pencils, it's kind of the same concept. You can just go and add another little layer on top. Just the issue with you're trying to work on is that tonal variation. So crayon, pencil, paint, whatever you're doing, we want to have an obvious highlight and an obvious shadow. So what is our next option that we're going to work on, Lily?
Well, literally you could do either.
You could do either, but we're going to work on our avocado next. So our avocado is slightly behind our onion. So we're going to start with the main body of our avocado with just some green. It's a pretty obvious green color. And we're going to do that same thing where we use round brush strokes in order to create the illusion that the avocado is round. So we're going to pull it over and make those round brush strokes. I like really obvious brush strokes. Lily, do you remember the artist that we talked about, gosh, it was a couple months ago now, that used really obvious brush strokes in his work?
Nope.
He was also kind of weird. He ended up being very famous.
No.
Vincent van Gogh. He used very, very, very obvious brush strokes. But he was amazing. So Starry Night, remember we did those Starry Night pictures? Yeah, that was Van Gogh. Okay, so same thing. Our avocado is slightly behind our onion, and so that means that actually our hot spot isn't going to be in the same spot as it is on the onion. So you can kind of see where I'm leaving a little bit of light there because that is where that highlight is going to be. So again, what do we add to make our highlight, Lily?
White.
A little bit of white. Or maybe even a lot of bit of white, depending on how light you want your highlight to be. And it really kind of depends on your light source, right? I mean, you could have a really strong light source.
Nobody can see my picture. It doesn't matter if it color.
Well, we'll show it in a minute, honey.
Hey, but I'm
So if you're watching your light source, you can see if you have a strong light source, which would be a much lighter highlight, or if you have a not as strong light source. And a lot of that depends on the time of the day. So right now we have indirect light because it is the morning coming through my window here. And so it is not as dark. And then what's our next step?
The hand sanitizer.
I haven't done the shadow on my avocado yet.
Me either.
So remember that black is bossy, but because our avocado is slightly behind our onion, there's actually two main shadows on our avocado. There's one right next to where the onion is in front of the avocado. And then there, of course, there's the one underneath that is the opposite of where the highlight is because our light source is coming this direction. So if Lily was in front of me, I would have a shadow right here, but I still have my highlight right here, correct? So we're going to do this shadow. We're also going to do this shadow. So I'm going to start. Remember, we're going to add that little bit of black. You don't want your shadow to be black. You just want it to be a darker shade of the color that you're using. And we're going to come back and we're going to add that shadow in.
You might need to blend that a little bit.
Yeah, I do need to blend it a little bit. You are correct, Anna. So we're going to keep those round brush strokes. A little bit of water on my paintbrush and I will blend it just a little bit.
Can I use the watercolors?
No, we're not done yet, honey.
I am done.
We'll do it together when we're done at the end. Okay, so our next step is going to be our hand sanitizer. Our hand sanitizer is kind of a cream color. We don't want to use just white because otherwise it's not going to really look like anything. So we're going to do a lot of white with a teeny tiny amount of black, just a little bit to make it gray. And then we're going to paint in our hand sanitizer. And if you are much further ahead of me in this, that is fine. You can fast forward through anything I am talking about right now. And if you're feeling confident in what you're doing, you can go ahead and fast forward. And then I really want you guys to go ahead and share these pictures that you're working on. I would love to see what you guys are creating at home with whatever materials and whatever items you're finding. So with our hand sanitizer, it's a cylinder. So what do we need to use to make it look round, Lily?
Cylinder brush strokes.
Cylindrical brush strokes. Yeah, we're going to use those round brush strokes again, where we're going to kind of curve this way in order to make the hand sanitizer look like it is.
You might need to blend it a little bit if you want to finish it and make sure it's really blended.
You might want to make it blended. Yes, that is true. So same thing, we have that highlight on that far side that faces the window. And so my hand sanitizer is a light gray, but it's a little bit too light. And so I'm coming back and I'm adding a little bit more white on top of what I've already painted, just so that I make sure that I have that highlight and that shadow, that really obvious highlight and shadow, since that's what we're working on today. Oop, that's way too dark. You used too much black. What is the black, Lily?
Black is bossy.
Black is bossy. So after we go ahead and paint in all of our still life items, what is our next step? What do we need to add into the edges of our painting?
Shade.
The shade, yep. So with our really obvious window light, or whatever your light source is, it's going to become apparent that you have shadows that the light source is creating. When we were in class, it was a lot harder to see because you guys were kind of far away from the apples and the light that the lamp was making. So you're going to be able to see a very obvious place where those shadows are being created by your different items with the light source. And so you'll notice that with our hand sanitizer, that our shadow for our hand sanitizer is actually kind of a triangle. It's really interesting. It's not the actual shape of the hand sanitizer. And the same thing with our onion and with our avocado. It's the shadows are elongating away from the item because the light source is coming from this direction. So I would like you to go in, and we're going to use a little bit of black and a little bit of white to make a gray. Instead of, before we were shading and we were tinting with our colors that we painted with, now we're going to use a black and a white together to make a gray for the shadow. Lily, could you bring your shadow out just a little bit further? Remember can you see here how it's kind of more of a long oval behind the avocado? So I've put my items into a bowl, and so it's going to be a little bit harder for me to make a shade, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make shadows behind my items, just the edge of it. And then I'm actually going to fill in the inside of my bowl with dark. So after we finished working on all of this, I would like you guys to go through, and we are going to use watercolors to finish up our paintings. It works like that resist that we did at school. We're going to use kind of the creme. We did the acrylic resist too. The next step at school before we left was going to be using the acrylics and then coming back with watercolors and doing it over the acrylics to fill in the rest of the picture. I'm also going to add shadows underneath my bowl where it would be on my table, because again, that light source is coming this way, and so there's going to be a shadow on this far side on my table, isn't there? So I'm going to add that in. I'm going to fill in whatever I want to do with the rest of my acrylics, and then we're going to come back and we're going to add watercolors on top, and then we will share our final products at the end of this video. Again, if you have any questions, leave comments and questions underneath, either on the YouTube link, or you can use it on the Facebook page. I am here to answer your questions if you have any. I cannot wait to see what you guys create, and have a wonderful day. See you later.
This is cool.
Okay, we're back. We have finished our paintings. We have signed our paintings, because every artist should sign their painting. And what are our next steps, Lily?
Cleaning up.
Cleaning up. And what are part of the rules of cleaning up? What should we do with our paintings first?
Put them in a safe place so they do not smudge.
Put them in a safe space so they don't smudge. And then we need to clean up our materials. So what do? We need to close we used watercolors. We're going to close our watercolors and put them back where they belong. We have our palettes, which are reusable because it's a yogurt container.
Can I say something?
Yes, Anna, what do you think?
I'm gonna make make mine dry it on top of
there's no wet stuff to get on my piano. That is all I ask. So we need to move our painting somewhere to dry. We need to rinse out our materials. So when we go rinse out our paintbrushes, what should happen with the water containers and the paintbrushes?
The water should be clear and the paintbrushes should have no paint in
They should, yep. So what we're going to do is you're going to rinse them under the water. I like to brush them up against my palm. That way I can see when the water is clear. And then how do we stow them?
Hairdo
Up, hairdo up. So make sure you put the hairdo up for them to dry. We need to rinse out our water containers. After we rinse out our water containers and rinse out our paintbrushes, what should we do in our sink area?
Clean up the sink.
So we need to wipe down the sink, and then also we need to wipe down what?
The table.
The table. We need to wipe down the table. So a lot of times I will use whatever paper towel I was using for dabbing my paintbrush. And then we throw it all away, and then we'll put our still life items away where we found them. And then, yes, Emma, what else would you like to add?
What were you at?
We wiped down our table, we rinsed all of our materials, we wiped down the sink so that we don't have materials scattered all over the sink, and then what?
What else?